Well, good afternoon. Hi, James. Good to be here today. What a wonderful building. There's lots of history here. So we're at the Business Junction, their annual conference and events. It's been wonderful meeting lots of SMEs. Hopefully you found the same, James, today.
Yeah, it's been a great event so far.
Yeah, and a thing about our grand subject of ESG and sustainability, when did you start getting involved in the subject?
So my background is in the cleaning and FM world in sports and entertainment venues. And in 2020, when COVID shut everything down, I decided to retrain into sustainability. It's always been a sort of passion of mine. Obviously, that was an opportune moment to retrain. And through that process, got involved with ESG Pro and now sort of help companies in that industry to become more sustainable. So to now.
And later on, we'll talk about your wonderful drones, James. If we get a moment, we'll try to talk about your drones. Yeah, it's very interesting. Lots of technology there. I suppose from my point of view, my introduction was looking back 2021. I was part of a technology software and services company, and we lost a major contract, £1 million contract, because we couldn't quantify what we were doing on ESG. It was one of our top 10 clients. And I made a promise at that point that I didn't want it to happen again. Wind the clock forward, 5 years now? And I'm now helping other companies protect their relationships and obviously helping them with bids and tenders. That's one of the things I'm very passionate about. Yeah. So, looking back, I know 2025, there was lots happening globally. What was your big sort of takeaways from 2025 and the landscape around sustainability?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time, obviously, globally. And it's, with the Trump administration was kind of up and down as to kind of where it's going geopolitically. But I still found that a lot of companies come to us and say, kind of similar to what you said, we've got a large client, the demands are becoming more focused on ESG, and we don't really know where to start and to fulfill those demands. We want to remain on a suppliers list, or we want to be involved in a tender, and we know we need to do more, which needs some guidance into how to go about that in the most efficient way. So that tends to be the most common question that I get.
Yeah, and I think I found that the large organisations weren't shouting as much about what they were doing. They were a bit worried, where they were promoting their products and services, how that would resonate with the audience. But they've not stopped doing what they were doing. And I'm certainly seeing a shift. What I thought was fascinating last year was the new Procurement Act that came out, the NHS Evergreen. I'm definitely seeing more activity and those requirements playing through to the SMEs in particular. Yeah, and I generally think there's a great opportunity to be an SME. Here we are in London. It's probably, apart from the capital of the UK, it's definitely starting to reward SMEs for good practice on ESG and sustainability. You finding the same?
100%. And some of the companies I first worked with that took through the B Corp assessment 4 or 5 years ago, it was a 12 to 18 month process to get them through it. But now they're really starting to reap the rewards. And we're talking about small independent businesses, in the region of anything from 5 to 10 million turnover. And then they're working with much bigger corporates, because once they've become a B Corp and they've started to look at their carbon accounting and they're starting to tick all the right boxes, it's kind of levitated their business to the next phase. And they're now working with clients that they never dreamed of working with 4 or 5 years ago. So I think, the proof's in the pudding. Was if you put the time and investment into a comprehensive ESG strategy, and it pays rewards for sure.
Yeah, and I know we've got clients of all different sizes, but often the best stories are about some of the smallest ones. Yeah, and I could think of a couple, an electrical contractor. When I started speaking to him about this was EcoVadis. Why? He said, Joe, our biggest customer have insisted that we have an EcoVadis accreditation. And I said, well, what would be the impact if you just didn't do it? And he said, well, they're 80% of our turnover. So the reality is it would probably play through. The business wouldn't be in existence. Yeah. Then we started talking about, well, what if this means you can go and talk to other companies and reduce the dependency on one customer? And then the other one was they provide specialist products within the NHS. 100% of their business linked with the NHS. The new Evergreen assessment, being told they've got to do it, And the requirement as part of the tender was, if they don't do it, they can't supply the NHS, which in theory means the business is wiped out. Yeah. So it can be quite dramatic. In the same token, it can become a great, I think sometimes I call it turning Evo stick into super glue with the relationship. It makes it more difficult to dislodge you as a key supplier.
Absolutely. And the scary thing is that a lot of these smaller companies actually don't know about these regulatory changes and these procurement acts and these frameworks that they have to comply with until such time as it comes to that point where they're told, we can't work with you unless you're doing X, Y, and Z. So to have a company that can help guide you through the process, can sort of look at your business holistically and help you to understand what it is that you need to do over the next 12, 24, 36 months is really crucial. And it's an investment, I think, that every business and every sector needs to be looking at, for sure.
Yeah. So with I was talking earlier, someone come onto the stand, they were talking about sweet spots, hot spots around this subject for 2026. Can you think of anything that you're finding? I know we're early on, it's in March, but anything that you're seeing with your engagements, James?
Yeah, well, energy efficiency is always a big one. So many companies still looking at ways in which they can reduce their costs, particularly in our industry, so the cleaning and facilities management industry, where labor costs are so important, and the cost of labor going up really puts pressure on small businesses. And so if they can find cost savings elsewhere, which are going to help them to reduce overheads, then that's really, really important. But just generally, I think there's a real sense of purpose around what companies do. Now people are starting to understand that ESG is not just about reducing your carbon footprint and becoming more sustainable environmentally. It's really about how your business can be for the greater good, how you can benefit your communities, how you can look after your people well. And, that's once people kind of start to follow it for those reasons, rather than just purely financial and business reasons, then that's when you're ready to kind of reach the...
And I think this year, for me, I know the Charities Commission, the new SORP requirements, which is mandatory ESG reporting for charities with revenue of 15 million or more. That's new. The International Sustainability Standards Board, that regulation is coming into the UK, which is around climate risk modelling. So there's some big challenges. So if the large corporates are doing the risk modelling, that's going to include the supply chain and the SMEs. So it's really interesting. And I believe there's definitely an opportunity now to use ESG as a lever for competitive advantage to help you win more customers. And of course, when you're looking to recruit different, new people, why not use your purpose as a way of attracting people in, because they might share the same values. So I think there's a great opportunity to, retain existing staff, but find new talent using ESG as a competitive advantage.
Absolutely. And the statistics speak for themselves. There's lots of information out there that if you're a B Corp certified business, you're likely to grow at a rate of 25% year-on-year growth, as opposed to the national average, which is 5%. Your retention rates are going to be much higher because people feel like they work in a purpose-driven business, which is actually cares about their people, and they want to make it a good place to work and a place that says people want to go to the office, for example, which is such a challenge at the moment for many companies I work with, is to getting people back to the office. So there's so many reasons. It's such a broad topic which touches all aspects of a way a business operates and the way it kind of looks after its stakeholders. That no matter what type of industry, what kind of service or product you're creating, it's really going to be beneficial to look at it in a strategic way.
Yes, I know on the stand, people were asking me about B Corp, EcoVadis. It was quite surprising. Some had not even heard of it, not really heard of the acronym ESG. But when we talk about the benefits and the outcomes, they all want growth, all want competitive advantage, improved bids and tenders. But if we look at B Corp and EcoVadis, I know they generally are quite attractive to the SMEs. Be interested to hear, if we look at the differences, maybe James, for your experience working with clients, maybe on B Corp, how have you found that so far?
Yeah, it's interesting because B Corp's actually, I think, 12 to 15,000 now globally, whereas EcoVadis is 150 or 200,000 globally. So, but B Corp's quickly become the better known purely because you see that symbol on so many products now on our supermarket shelves and it's become recognizable to the consumer. So but the way I usually look at it is that if you're dealing mainly B2B, then EcoVadis is probably the best route for you to look at initially. It's you can get that certification much faster. It's more tiered, so you can work your way up from committed to bronze to silver and gold and so on. And it really depends on what your drivers are. So part of the process that we take a company through is understanding what is their vision for the next sort of 3 to 5 years, who are their main stakeholders, what do they want to achieve with their ESG strategy, and then working out the best certification for them. So I actually put a proposal out to a company the other day that deals in travel accessories, so adapters and pillows that we sleep on in airplanes and so on. So their main outlets are airport retail. Yeah. So being a B Corp on having that trademark on their products might not necessarily benefit them because those are kind of impulse buys that I need this adapter now, so I'm going to buy it because So it's not really the consumer choice at that point isn't necessarily driven by ESG or sustainability. It's by necessity. Yeah. But if you're selling a manufactured product on a supermarket shelf and people are starting to look at what its carbon footprint is and where it's farmed and so on, then that's a completely different story. So there's nuances in every business and different demands, I think, in what it needs. So
I think coming back to B Corp, that traceability now that people want to see, if you pick up something in the supermarket, you can be there 5-10 minutes trying to read everything. Yeah. That B Corp logo by default means that background work's been done. So it's almost trusting that. There was a similar thing with, made in the UK. People bought into that logo. But I share similar thoughts around B Corp, B2C, SMEs of a certain size. And I think with EcoVadis, generally that's come from above. It's their big clients have said you need to do this or think about it. But again, it's a year-on-year improvement, whereas B Corp is that every 3 years, isn't it, the assessment? So I think there's pros and cons, but I know looking at where they want to be, who their clients are, that can shape what you want to do as a business. And I generally find with B Corps, it's more immersive from top to bottom and bottom to top through the business, where sometimes with EcoVadis, it can sit, within business development teams, commercial directors, CEOs. So sometimes it's not as public and not as immersive, but both of them they share similar things. Your B Corp's, 7 mandatory topics now. This EcoVadis is 4 key pillars, but there's lots of similarities. With both.
Yeah, I mean, you're covering a lot of the same topics, a lot of the same ground is covered through the different assessments, but it's really about understanding who your stakeholders are and what's important to them. I think that I've worked with some companies who have become B Corp and they're in the B2B space, but that's really rocketed them forward within their client base anyway, because their clients particularly understand what's involved in the hard work that goes into achieving that certification. Whereas EcoVadis there's more supply chain focus. I see it more as the kind of industry certification, which is going to help you to get onto tenders and procurement frameworks and so on. So there's great benefits to both of them. It really just kind of depends on where your business is at currently. And I agree. How much will you want to put in? Yeah, I would never say one is better than the other. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. And I think there's pros and cons with both. So it's, but I think maybe before we forget, I want to ask you about, because I know in the UK, there's the building regulations, the new EPC ratings, which is really, particularly in London, I think there's something like 50% of buildings need some level of retrofit. The challenge is to know what level of retrofit you need. Yeah. So I know your drones, they do cleaning, but I know there's another part of it, which is looking at sort of 3D mapping. Yeah, well, so with 3D mapping, but also, so we can use drones to conduct building inspections, and through analyzing both thermal and visual data, we can actually build quite comprehensive building condition reports, which help business owners, asset owners, property owners to understand how their building is performing in an energy efficiency point of view. So it's all well and good knowing sort of what the energy usage of your building is and what the carbon footprint might be, but then where do you start in terms of the remedial work that need to be done to improve things? So using drone technology and data analysis, we're able to actually pinpoint areas of a building which could be improved. There might be in terms of their insulation, or where there's areas of moisture ingress or thermal bridging and so on. So many, many different things that we can help people to identify which are not visible to the naked eye. So almost our goal is to help people to identify those hidden issues, and not only from an energy efficiency standpoint, but also so they can act a proactive maintenance schedule, because a lot of the clients we deal with have really high reactive maintenance costs. And of course, if you get ahead of those and you start to fix things early, you don't only save money, but you save carbon, you save energy, and you save a lot of work and transport going into maintaining that property. So it's a great technology. The data analysis with the assistance of AI is really pushing it forward to the next level. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, good. So with the clock ticking, maybe what we should do before we finish, James, is, and I've been asked on the stand today about, the big question about, how do we start? It seems quite daunting to think about any accreditation. So, I know we've both got ways that we help clients. So do you just want to talk about some of the things that you might suggest at the beginning as part of that process?
Sure, very simple. Contact ESG Pro and let us take you through a readiness assessment. And we'll take a snapshot of your business, that understands. The way I say it, ESG is just about demonstrating continuous improvement, right? So it's about understanding what your impacts are in terms of your environment, social and governance, and what are you putting in place to mitigate them. So once we have a snapshot of your business and we understand what it is that you do and the impacts that you have, we can very easily advise on how best to mitigate those impacts and also demonstrate that to your stakeholders. And ultimately, that's what it's about: year-on-year improvement and just demonstrating that you're on a path to the greater good.
Yeah, and I've found, sometimes companies have started off with thinking, we'll get an ISO standard.
Yeah.
But the ISO standards, generally, you've got a small amount of people working on that. And it's like your car MOT, pass or fail every year.
Yeah.
But I think ESG, whether it's B Corp, EcoVadis, is about continual investment in time and making it, including as many people as possible. Those stakeholders go out of your building into your communities, into your suppliers. But yes, I share the same mindset. It's not quite as easy as just handing it over to us and we'll bring it home. But certainly our fractional resource support, I think, resonates really well with the SMEs, because most senior people do not have 8 hours time in a day to sit in a room talking about sustainability. They love the 45 minutes, the hour, weekly, bi-weekly, check-in, check-out. And then our way of managing tasks and activities between key stakeholders, I think is where I think I'm seeing it work. And that bit about continual improvement is, I think something like EcoVadis, I've said sometimes, if you stand still and your clients go forward, you're likely to fall behind because it's rated against industry peers.
Yeah.
And B Corp is now, you've got a 3-year assessment, but they're asking more about annual progress, and they've lifted the standards. So I think B Corp is certainly more of a challenge. They love third-party assurance assessment and support. So I think that's the role that we can play as well. That validation from a third party is hugely powerful.
Absolutely. And the further you take your own ESG strategy, the more value you can add to your clients as well, but also your suppliers. If you bring them with you on the journey and you're demonstrating that you're looking at impacts outside of your own direct control, that's where you really start to make impact. And that's where, in the eyes of buyers and procurement frameworks, you really set yourself apart. Because and obviously we take companies through that stage by stage. Yeah. You can't go from zero to hero overnight. It's a process. It's a journey that every company should be on. And having that guidance and that support. And ultimately, at ESG Pro, you have a team of people working for you. You have your carbon expert, your project manager, your certification manager. You don't just get a single consultant. I think it's great.
Where thankfully we've got a team of ESG trained lawyers behind us. We've got specialists in supply chain assessments. We've got copywriters for annual sustainability.
No call that can't be answered.
So there's no way I know I couldn't do it all by myself. No way. Yeah. And but no, it's fascinating. But I suppose just as we wrap up, we're nearly finished here. I don't think there's ever been as good an opportunity for an SME to share the values around ESG and do better business, whether it's government, local authorities or large corporates. And if you're in London, even better. So thank you very much. I think we've finished.
Sure.
Look at that.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah.
Well done.
Fuck.